Thank the gospel airs for the beautiful music this morning. Also want to thank everybody who helped make Fall Fest a big success yesterday. We had a great day, beautiful weather, and so thank you to everybody who worked hard on that. And then lastly, I remind you that if there's one more all-church event coming up this Wednesday night, Trunk or Treat, bring your car, decorate it, and it should be a fun night. That's Wednesday night at 5 o'clock out here in the front parking lot. Would you join me for a word of prayer this morning? Loving God, speak to us through these scriptures again this morning, and may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. You are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. This week, Megan and I traveled to Union City, Indiana, which is on the border of Indiana and Ohio, and I officiated the service of her grandmother who passed away. Anna Ruth Chapman was 95 years old. She was a wonderful lady, a very special lady, and we went and celebrated her life. But the service was held at Trinity Lutheran Church there in Union City, and my in-laws had asked the minister there if I could do the service, and he said fine. And we got there. I said, I'm going to see if this guy has a sense of humor or not. So I went into the church, and I told him his name was Gil. I said, Gil, it's great to meet you. Not many people know this, but Grandma Chapman dabbled in snake handling a little bit, and I brought a few up from Tennessee. They're in the car. Should I leave them in the car or leave them in your office until the funeral? And he looked at me like I was crazy until he figured out I was kidding with him, and then he busted out laughing. And so I thought, well, sometimes a little humor is good during a time of grief. And then I thought, now I got to go back to Nashville and work on a sermon on the 9th commandment. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. There's another story told about a man who went fishing in a national park, and he went to the lake, and the law was you can only keep 3 fish. Well, this guy was having a heyday fishing. He caught 12 fish in an hour. And he put them in a bucket. He's walking back to his car, and all of a sudden a park ranger approached him and said, can I see what you have in your bucket? And he looked and he saw 12 fish. He said, well, I'm going to have to arrest you because the law is you can only keep 3 fish. And the man, thinking quick on his feet, said, no, you don't understand. These are my pet fish. And he said, your pet fish? He said, yeah, I bring them here, and I put them in the lake, and I let them swim, and then I blow this horn underwater, and they come back and they get in the bucket. And he said, really? Said, yeah, let's go check it out. So they went to the lake, and he put the fish in the water, and the fish were swimming around for about 5 minutes, and the park ranger said, all right, get them back in the bucket. He said, what are you talking about? He said, your pet fish, it's time to get them back in the bucket. He said, I don't have any pet fish. And one more for you this morning before we dive into this commandment. There was a minister walking down the street when he came upon a group of a dozen boys between the ages of 10 and 12. And the boys had surrounded a dog, and concerned that the boys were going to hurt the dog, he walked over to check on them and said, what are you doing with that dog? And one of the boys replied, well, this is an old stray dog in the neighborhood. We all want him, but we can't decide who gets to take him home. So we've decided that whichever one of us can tell the biggest lie will get to keep the dog. Well, the Reverend was taken back by that. He said, you boys shouldn't be having a lying contest. He then launched into a 10-minute sermon about lying and why it is bad and how you should always tell the truth in life. Didn't you boys know that it's a sin to lie? And he ended by saying, when I was your age, I never told a lie. Well, there was a dead silence for about a minute, and just as the preacher was beginning to think that he'd gotten through to the boys, the smallest boy gave a deep sigh and said, all right, give the preacher the dog. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. This commandment has 2 implications. The first is you shall not lie, a prohibition against lying. The second is a prohibition against spreading falsehoods about other people, which is also a form of lying. Let me begin by asking you a question this morning. Why do people lie? What causes us to lie? A lot of research has been done, as you can imagine, on this topic. Psychologists have analyzed this question. There have been books and articles and all types of scholarly journals written about this question. But there are 5 basic reasons that I can identify as to why people lie. The first is fear. We lie because we fear letting the truth be known. We're afraid of what others might think if they find out the truth. Fear is also directly tied to having a lack of courage and a lack of self-confidence. And so sometimes people who don't feel good about themselves will tell a lie. The second reason people lie is shame and guilt. There's a lot of shame and guilt in our culture, which causes people to be afraid. People have done and continue to do some bad things that they're not proud of, and then when they're asked about it, they will lie to cover it up and avoid talking about it. People would rather lie to other people than have them find out the truth because for whatever reason they are ashamed of the truth. The third reason that I can identify is selfishness. People lie because they are looking out for themselves, and they don't mind deceiving others or misleading them as long as it will continue to benefit them personally. In fact, I would say just about all forms of lying are selfish. We deceive other people to make ourselves feel and look better. The fourth reason is ambition. People lie because it will help them achieve something. It will help them move forward in their career. It will help them get more money or more prestige. It will help them earn the next position or get ahead in some way. And then the fifth reason that I can identify is actually a fairly innocent, or the best position of all of them, and that is we lie because we want to be nice and we don't want to hurt other people. We will lie, especially in the South, because we don't want to hurt somebody else's feelings. We don't want to tell them the truth. We feel that the truth would actually do more harm than good, and so we don't tell it to them. The author Jenna McCarthy wrote an article called The Truth About Lying, where she says that most lies aren't actually intended to be hurtful. And then she gives 6 basic reasons why people lie. She says people lie to save face, they lie to shift blame, they lie to avoid confrontation, they lie to get their own way, they lie to be nice, and they lie to make themselves feel better. And I think all these are accurate as well. In addition to the 9th commandment, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, there is a lot in the Bible that has to do with telling the truth, not lying. Many Proverbs talk about this. Proverbs 12, lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully are his delight. Proverbs 13, the righteous hate falsehood, but the wicked act shamefully and disgracefully. Proverbs 14, a faithful witness does not lie. Ephesians 4, Paul says, let no evil talk come out of your mouths, but only what is useful for building up, as there is need, so that your words may give grace to those who hear. Colossians 3, do not lie to one another. James chapter 3, no one can tame the tongue, a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless the Lord and Father, and with it we curse those who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. For whatever reason, human beings seem to have a hard time with the truth. We also have a hard time with making sure that what we hear about other people and what we pass along about other people is actually true. Gossip is a problem in our culture. People love to gossip. We hear something, and very rarely do we go and actually find out if it is true. We just pass it along as though it's the truth. And what happens is, people's reputations end up hinging on hearsay. Perception often becomes reality. And if somebody makes up a rumor and passes it along, then others will assume that it's true. And people's reputations can get ruined very quickly and very easily. But God commands us, do not bear false witness against your neighbor. In preaching on this commandment, John Calvin once said that we need to consider why God gave us our tongues and why he gave us speech. The reason being that we might be able to communicate with each other. And what is the purpose of human communication if it isn't our mutual support and charity? And seeing that God has given it to us for the purpose of nurturing tender love and fraternity with each other, may we not abuse it in order to gossip. That's John Calvin. Stanley Hauerwas and Will Willimon quote St. Augustine, who once said, "A lie consists in speaking falsehood with the intention of deceiving." And then they add, "We owe it to one another as creatures of a God to tell one another the truth. And from nowhere do we lie more readily than in the easy speech of the everyday. Truthfulness requires work. Lying is lazy." What about politics? We're in a political season right now. There's an election a week from Tuesday. Did you guys know that? Is it possible to be in politics and not lie? Do politicians know when they are making false promises, or do they just figure it out later and then say, well, I was wrong? The president of Harvard University, the current president, was once asked if there was a book that she would recommend, one book, to any undergraduate student, what would it be? You know what she said? "I would recommend Catherine Schultz's book titled On Being Wrong." And in that book, Schultz says this: "A whole lot of us go through life assuming that we are basically right, basically all the time, about basically everything. About our political and intellectual convictions, our religious and moral beliefs, our assessment of other people, our memories, our grasp of the facts. As absurd as it sounds, when we stop to think about it, our steady state seems to be one of unconsciously assuming that we are very close to being omniscient. Yes, there is a difference between lying and being wrong. Politicians would tell you that, and it's true. In John's gospel, Jesus famously said, "If you continue in my word, then you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." As Christians, we believe that Jesus is the way and the truth and the life, and Jesus shows us the way to God. Jesus is God incarnate. But how does the truth set us free? How does it liberate us? I'll close with these thoughts. The truth sets us free because it allows us to be ourselves. If you tell the truth, then you have nothing to worry about. We were having a conversation in the elders meeting last Sunday about why is it that groups like AA and Al-Anon have done a much better job of helping people be honest and helping people heal than the church in general. And thank goodness we have an AA group that meets on this campus, and we're going to have an Al-Anon group that's going to start meeting here on November the 8th. It's because at those meetings, people are honest. They're vulnerable. They have hit rock bottom, and they don't have anything else to hide. It's really a matter of life and death. And so maybe the church could take a lesson from these groups, and we should realize that it's okay to tell each other that we don't have it all together. We're all broken. We're all struggling. We all need support and encouragement, forgiveness and grace. We all have to learn to admit that because it's true for all of us. Secondly, the truth sets us free because when we tell the truth, we don't have to worry about remembering what we said. People that lie on an ongoing basis have to keep up with their lies, keep up with their stories. And oftentimes they have a hard time remembering what they have lied about, and that's when they get caught in the lie. If you tell the truth, then you don't have anything to hide or anything to worry about. And that's a much healthier and a much happier way to live. Third, the truth sets us free because then we get to know other people for who they really are and not for who they are pretending to be. I don't have to tell you that so many people in our culture put on fronts and pretend to be something that they are not. Halloween will be Friday night. For a lot of people, Halloween is every day. People pretend to have more money than they really do. They pretend to have more friends than they really do. And when we act like this, the sad part is that we have no idea who we are actually dealing with, and fronts can only be sustained for so long before they get discovered and before they are found out. There is absolutely no substitute for being real, being authentic, and being a person who is in touch with reality. And lastly this morning, the truth sets us free because the truth is what God expects from us. You know, we can fool lots of people into believing lots of things, but we can never fool God. We can get other people to believe all kinds of things about us and who we are, but we cannot deceive God. God knows our hearts, and God asks us to be truthful. The Lord said to Samuel in the Old Testament when he was looking for the next king, "Do not look upon his appearance or the height of his stature, for I have rejected him. For the Lord does not see as mortals see. They look on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart." And how true that is. People are so concerned about outward appearance. People are so concerned about where you live and what you drive and where you work and where your kids go to school and where you vacation. But God isn't. God is concerned about your heart and what's in your heart. And that's the truth. And accepting the truth will set us free. Amen.